I just think the vision of Beyond Football is just incredible. Anyway,
Did you get that on record?
Yeah.
Lovely.
And also I've heard of other ideas. I've heard of people talk about a LinkedIn for footballers.
Have you? I was at the event on Sunday. Patrice Evra and Martin Noble, player app. The
Really?
player app, yeah.
No.
So that's the LinkedIn for footballers.
Really?
But we're not even supposed to mention that.
See, I don't know what it was called. There was a company.
I didn't know there was one. I was just saying,
Yeah.
There was one because I used to live in Dubai, and I was looking at investments and stuff like that. And I can't remember the name of it. There was a company, and it was backed by Luis Figo.
Okay, yeah. Luis Figo,
He was
yeah.
starting it up, and I don't know if it ever went into tuition.
I think the problem is a lot of people outside football, they think you're all Kevin De Bruyne's, don't they?
Yeah.
They don't realise the reality of 99% of professional footballers. And, my first job was in a football club. My third job was in a football club when I was like...
Manchester United, right?
No, Notts County.
Liverpool. Oh, Notts County.
As a commercial manager, I was the youngest commercial manager in the history of the Football League at the time.
Wow.
I've got a great story about one of our players and how it relates to
you might have to
Beyond
save
Football. Yeah, just a
No,
little
it's recording.
anecdote.
Let's go ahead.
Is it?
Crack straight
Okay.
in.
Let's go.
Yeah. Yes.
Right, enjoy, guys.
All right,
Cheers.
cheers.
See you on the other.
Great business idea, though, isn't it?
Oh, it's good.
It's amazing.
Fantastic. Oh, and also I've bought this. So what I tend to do, I don't know if you know, I'm a published author.
Lovely.
So, and what I've done when I've done podcasts or lectures before is I've said things like the first 2 people to contact you after listening to this
Get
get
one.
a copy
Get
of the
one.
book.
Oh,
Whatever,
lovely.
it's up to you whether you want to.
Or
not.
maybe they can use the code #BeyondFootball. Little discount.
Well, I don't know
10%.
about discount because it's sold on. We don't sell it. I didn't publish it. Routledge published it, so they control the distribution.
Okay.
But just in case you want to shout out to your readers if they want a copy
Yeah,
of
no,
it.
definitely.
For sure. It's amazing.
That's
Your listeners.
amazing. See, she's on it more than me.
That's why we got to let her speak. I know.
Because obviously we met at the sports law event.
Yeah.
And I just went out. I think I went to the toilet, and then obviously we just connected. We were just speaking.
Yeah.
Whilst obviously the next session was there, but she was just showing me.
Well, I spotted you because you asked an amazing question. You brought up a fantastic point, or you asked a great question. You were telling us about somebody had started a removal business, particularly for
Just
footballers.
press.
Yeah.
Understanding what happens to footballers when they transfer and understanding the unique needs and requirements they have. And I clocked you from that.
Yeah,
You're a smart guy.
great.
Smart guy at the back.
That's when I literally came. I think I came in a little bit late to the. It was the round table.
I missed the round tables.
But
Yeah,
that
yeah,
round
yeah.
table
That
was
trainer.
top tier,
Yeah.
man. It's just a debate, discussion, and there wasn't really any footballers in the room to obviously give them that perspective. So a lot of people were under the impression that a lot of these different things are not happening. So I was just mentioning obviously Josh Pask, who we had on the podcast, about what he does and the players using their data and leveraging their personal brand. And she just she pulled me and just showed me, told me about all the great work that she does. Yeah.
But why do you think it is that you were the only one of the 2 footballers there? Why do you think more footballers aren't, I'm not going to say aren't entrepreneurial, because being entrepreneurial is quite unique, but aren't putting themselves out there more off the field?
I think it's probably the way the stigma has been within the game. Oftentimes in the game, if you're seen to be doing something else, it distracts you from your football. So people feel like you have to put all your eggs in one basket until that basket breaks, and then everything comes crashing down. So I think the stigma's slowly changing through role models, through conversations like this, through people that are championing the need and necessity for people to do things, basically.
And that brings me back to my experience. So how old am I? So 1984 or something, 82, I'm working for Notts County Football Club. Wow. Youngest commercial manager in the history of the Football League at that point. Actually, it was pretty cool because we were in the old, back in the day, it was like the old 3rd division. And while I was with them, we went successively, promotion, ended up going to Wembley. They'd never been to, the oldest Football League club in the world, never been to Wembley. And of course, we ended up getting promoted. We had 1 season in the new style Premier League and then came straight out. But we had a footballer called Gary Lund. And his wife worked for Barclays Bank. So every close season, Gary used to go and work in the bank for like 4 or 6 weeks or something like that, because we had close seasons back then. You don't really have them now, do you? With
What do you
all
mean
your
by close season?
Off season.
off season.
Okay,
Yeah.
like how long was that?
Well, it's the same duration as it is now.
Oh, okay.
But they didn't do these frigging pre-season friendlies that you guys have to do all the time, yeah? I mean, they did, but much smaller. They definitely didn't travel abroad, Anyway, So we had a real fix. I mean, working in the business, you used to have a closed season or an off season where you planned for the next season. The people working in football clubs don't even have that anymore because it's constant. Anyway, digressing. Gary Lund, a bit of a donkey on the field, admittedly, but really smart guy. And his wife worked at Barclays Bank, and he used to go in the summer. And as you say, I didn't realise until you just said what you said. The other footballers used to take the mickey out of him. Yeah. He left the world of football because he was good. He was very good for Notts County, but he wasn't going to progress elsewhere. He started an estate agent in Nottingham, Royston and Lund, became one of the biggest independent estate agents in the East Midlands. I don't know if he sold it now, but the point is it will be worth millions. I mean, millions. And yeah, he took that opportunity he had back then. And until you just said, what you just said about the stigma, never understood why the other footballers were what I considered to be taking the mickey. But the point is they weren't supportive of it.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I think it's hearing more stories like this, because I guess it could have been happening back in the day.
Well, that's what I mean. It was 30 years ago.
It was pressed down.
34 years ago.
Yeah.
34 years ago.
So I think it's probably happening in like behind the scenes, but the awareness of it needs to be more so we can start to normalize it.
Yeah,
that's the thing. We shouldn't be hiding in the background doing our exams and starting businesses. This should be forefront.
What are some of
news
like the stigma you've experienced on your journey? Because obviously you've done a lot in terms of you've come through different academies, played first team in these change rooms, and you're doing LFE work, degree, a master's, courses. Like, what has been some of the stigma you've experienced?
I think when I was coming through at Charlton, there was two boys, me and another boy, Tom Derry. He studied DT and I studied A-level business studies and maths. So we used to get changed in our whistles and flutes, as you say, in our suits, and then we would go off to sixth form. And obviously some boys would laugh, some boys would be like, oh, no, that's good. Oh, where you going?
Yeah.
But you kind of just had to step out of your comfort zone. You know, people would be looking at you and saying, is this not going to distract you from football? What do you want to do? You can only do one. You can't do both. And kind of just overcoming those things to say, I'm actually more than a footballer. You know, what I do doesn't define who I am and what I'm capable of doing. Just because I'm good at one thing doesn't mean I can't be good at other things as well. And throughout my career, I've seen players who, they call you busy. I don't know if you ever heard the word busy. It's like, in football, it's like you go up and beyond to do extras.
Right. And
and you kind of make other people look bad. So people try and pull you down to their level because you're making them look worse by doing more.
Yeah.
So it's like us running at the same pace and I start running a bit quicker.
Say,
You might be running at a
busy,
great
man.
pace, but because I'm running at a better pace, it makes you look slower.
But you know what? I guess that's not dissimilar to the general principle anyway, that there are some people in life who want to see you fail or don't want to see you progress at the pace at which you can. So I guess it's not dissimilar to what probably happens in normal life.
Yeah.
But because football is such a microcosm, it's such this silo of individuals that are close and work together and, you know, look the same, behave the same, blah, 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 that they do expect you to all conform and behave the same. But that mentality of those other people who detract, that's present in any industry, isn't it? I guess just with it being... So, Daniel, you just pointed to Tony, though, and asked him about his... You've done exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Your master's degree, your education, your entrepreneurial spirits, it's exactly the same for you.
Yeah.
I know you're at the same team now, but have you had the same sort of
Yeah,
detractors
like,
over the years?
From young, you know, since I was at Chelsea, you know, Chelsea used to do day release. Obviously, I'm making sure I'm doing all my work at day release. People are like taking the mick out of you, getting stuff right, doing well in your exams, all of that. Like, I came into West Ham with my GCSE results. I got like really good grades. They're like, it's just busy. Like, it's the banter. That's the culture.
Yeah.
They're gonna banter you for being busy.
So do you think some of your teammates, not calling out names, sat listening to this and thinking, oh, man.
Yeah, he's just busy. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, 100%. I think I've seen the shift over the years, though. I feel like teammates now are actually respecting the fact that you do something alongside your football. They're respecting the fact that you have an identity that's more than just a footballer, you know. And I think it's starting to clock on, especially players that are coming to the end and they haven't used their time wisely.
Yeah.
They're looking back and saying, he's been doing this for years. Why didn't I do it? I wish I had done more. Yes, I can start now, but imagine if I started then.
Do you mind if I ask, it's not dissimilar to my message with pro data stat, but do you mind if I ask another question? Apologies if I'm being rude or offensive, but do you think it's only perhaps for players that when they get to a point where they realise, I'm not going to be Kevin De Bruyne, is that the tipping point, or do you think, no, do it from the beginning?
I think you can do it from the beginning.
Okay.
But I think you have to, sometimes I call it, does it take a crash for you to realise it, to wake up and smell the coffee? You know,
Right.
does something significant have to happen? Oftentimes, yes, because people aren't naturally in tune to do those things. Naturally, you do one thing and you do it well. The minute you can't do that anymore, you do something
Did you
else.
have a crash? Did you have a crash? What happened?
I think for me, mine was probably more culture. So in the African Nigerian culture, education is seen above football.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you come to the UK, football's seen above education. So when you start to see things in my household, what is valuable is a degree, is A levels, is studying, is reading books.
Did your mum want you to be a doctor?
My dad
Yeah.
did.
my dad wanted me to be a doctor.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
and when you're young, you just think this is normal.
Yeah.
But
Oh my.
you're used to, I call it earning the right to play. I couldn't go and play for my Sunday league team if I hadn't done my housework, hadn't done my
Yeah,
homework.
Amazing.
hadn't done,
Both of you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
Because
standard,
that's
yeah.
just simply
That's actually
the culture.
fantastic, actually, and that's actually great attitude as a parent. I sort of like that.
Yeah. So
Yeah, you can't.
so I think it's an interesting one, but I feel like throughout my career I've had probably setbacks which have either validated or made the passion for me to do something alongside my football even more, because it's so unpredictable. You don't know what you're going to get. You don't know what tomorrow holds, that it allows me to go into tomorrow with a smile on my face, just in case football ends. I'm good to go. So would there be There's probably mini crashes on the way, and probably a culture kind of aspect. But I guess we're here to champion, normalize it from as young as
Yes.
possible.
Young, yeah.
Because
Doesn't
it's
matter
possible.
about culture, doesn't matter
Because
about
it's
crashes.
Yeah,
BAU, we call it, business as usual.
Yeah,
That's right.
That's good.
but even as Toby was speaking, I was like, yeah, I know exactly how Toby ended up. When I speak to his dad, he's just like, Daniel, please, go and do your masters. Go and do your, he always, he's
My
always
dad's solid.
encouraging, obviously, that education side. And
solid.
he's just like, yeah, come on, like, obviously very passionate about that. And it's amazing. So it's amazing to see. And I feel like we're very, very fortunate to obviously come from a culture that values those things, because like they say, like, your environment influences it massively.
So how are you going to embed that change? How are you going to spread the word, given that you're talking to people who don't have your
From a
cultural
different
background?
culture, yeah.
How are you going to tackle that? More
Well,
case studies like this, more education, more
Yeah,
knowledge?
but that's why it's like my mission when I sat down on the drawing board for this podcast, we want to highlight the stories of these trailblazers that are doing these things.
Yeah.
So as we've seen, the more that we've released podcasts, I'm like, oh, Simon Church, he done this. Oh, Toby done this.
Brilliant, yeah.
Oh, another guy who's really up and coming, Luther Wilding, plays for Stevenage, property company, Wilding Adventures.
Wow.
And he plays
amazing.
professional footballers, League One or League Two.
Yeah, I think League One.
And then League One, and he's doing property as his own business, property developments, he's content creation.
What's his background? What culture is he?
I think he's mixed between English and Caribbean,
Right.
yeah. But I want to bring alive those stories and show
Yeah.
people that it's beneficial, it's necessary, and it's possible. But it's about showing people that it's not only from people from our culture, but there's people like, Josh Pax, there's people like David Wheeler, born and bred in the UK, but he's had a drive for sustainability, climate action, change, and he's had a
Brilliant.
successful career. But he has a master's degree in sports psychology whilst playing for Wycombe Wanderers.
Brilliant.
And like, when I was studying a first year pro at West Ham, I was in my first year of my degree alongside it. No one else was doing it. I didn't see anywhere online, searching on YouTube, footballer, balancing something else.
I was studying, but it's okay.
But I didn't know him. He's not active on socials, isn't it? But see, that's what I'm saying. I didn't know.
Yeah, it's
I didn't know
true.
Toby back
It's
then.
true.
What?
You have to amplify
But
the
then
message, though.
I wanted to, that's the mission. We want to show people that this is not like crazy. People
No.
are doing this and it's possible. So I feel that's what, when you give people hope to show that, yeah, it can be done, that's really
So
a
what
game
about the
changer.
practicalities then? What are your peers? Do your what if your peers said to you, where do you find the time? Yeah. So how do you address that? Because they're going to have concerns. Where do you find the time? Where do you find the money?
It's an interesting one because I always say you do what's important to you. So it's not so much about finding the time. You find time. People find time to sleep. People find time to eat. People find time to do whatever is a priority to them. So it's more so shifting the mindset because we're not going to sit next to someone and write out their essay or write out their CV for them. But we want to try and change the way that they think so that the way they approach doing something alongside their football or being more than a footballer or doing something beyond football is now ingrained and organic inside of them. So it just comes out.
But, okay, so you guys are leading the charge. You're two footballers from Maidenhead United. You have been surrounded by advisors since you first had talent, yeah, or people you had spotted you with talent. What about you? What about the advisors in this industry? Shouldn't they be also advising their clients that this is, the agents, the
and
managers,
that's where we want to infiltrate in terms of consultancy. So Toby's very big on positioning ourselves as consultants, understanding that we're beyond football consultants. We can help players, not only players, but in terms of the mission that beyond football, we want to work, our target market is players, but we want to work with people surrounding players in the player ecosystem.
Yeah.
So that's why we've had parents on, we've had agents on this podcast.
Brilliant.
We've had scouts, coaches, different people.
Are they all in agreement, the people that you're talking to, or is it taking some education as well?
No, they all agree, but now it's about equipping them with the skills and the tools. So my vision now is to now having our consultancy working alongside agents, working alongside scouts, referring players on to see, okay, cool. If you're working with an agent and your player doesn't have a contract, what is that agent doing for you? In the past, I've worked with players or with agents, I'm in that situation and they're offering you nothing. Nothing. As in, they're like, oh, I've tried, I've called all the clubs, but there's nothing I can do for you. And that player is left in the dark, no opportunities. And that's where we want to come and solve that issue and say, okay, cool, right. You might have said the player feels like the agents failed them, but this is your options. These are your opportunities. These are your ways that you can now take your career beyond football.
Are there any other entities that you feel might have some responsibility to help with this? Like, for example, the clubs or the PFA or, who else?
It's an interesting one because with my master's at the moment in sports, business, management and policy, that's my exact question. Because I'm not a big one. I know about amplifying messages. I know about kind of getting your name out there and pushing what you stand for. But ultimately, at the end of the day, and right at the center of all of this is an individual. And that's a footballer who is maybe not prepared enough for life after football. That's what I care about ultimately. So for me, my question is, where does this responsibility lie? Because we can all finger point all day, but at the end of the day, if that individual isn't whole or actually living the best life that they can, that's an issue. There's money flying around. There's people's brands being elevated to different levels.
People's
there's clubs
data's being used.
People's data. There's all of these different things that are going on around a player, but a player can be left empty and broken by a system which was once a dream to them. So I completely understand that there's loads of different stakeholders, but I think really looking at saying, where does that responsibility lie? Yes, there's agents. Yes, there's football clubs. And I think it's a collaborative effort. Everyone needs to rise up and say, let's all, as I would say, eat. Let's all be well. Why not? Is that a possibility? Because I feel like at the expense of an individual or some individuals, some people are benefiting and profiting. And I don't think it should be. It could be the football
Premier
system.
League.
But the thing is, if everyone's
billions in revenue,
if everyone's in agreement with that and everyone signed up to that, there's not a problem with that because everyone's given their
The
consent.
challenge you still have is something that Daniel's just alluded to, is that ultimately football's a business now, yeah?
So
somebody's going to have to pay for it. So where does that come from?
So if that's the case, then the responsibility has to be from the individual that's putting themselves into that business. Yeah. And if it's not, then...
What do you mean? You mean the footballer?
The player, yeah.
It either has to be the player or the agent or the parent or people that are allowing the
Whoever's
clubs.
benefiting in the chain somewhere.
Potentially. Or you have to ask yourself, is this something that I actually want to do? If this is the system that I'm putting myself into. We have to... Because at the end of the day, we want the player to be whole. That should be the end goal. We shouldn't just fleece them for their talents and their successes and then for them to be left broken. But if they're putting themselves in that, knowing that people are making billions off their name, billions off all the stuff that they have, that's what they've signed up for. If there's now ignorance there or they don't know about it, should they know, one, who's informing them and what can they do about it? So I think these are all the different questions which probably we don't have conversations like this in the change room. So how are we informing?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I feel it links closely with what we spoke about in terms of, do players know the risk around what they're getting themselves into?
Yeah, about wanting to chase the dream.
The
of being
dream.
a
Do they know the
professional
risks?
footballer.
And obviously, cryptocurrency now, before you can invest
Well,
now.
that's a bit of a segue. Where did that come from?
Nice. This is the analogy, like Gen Z analogy, innit? But nowadays, if you want to invest in Coinbase, you have to do an actual exam. You have to understand cryptocurrency
Really,
before
to
you
invest?
Yeah,
I never
to
knew
invest,
that.
yeah.
Who's brought that rule in?
Coinbase and like the FDA.
Have they?
Yeah.
Fantastic. What
So
are
now,
they?
before obviously during COVID, everyone's losing a lot of money.
Yeah,
I've lost thousands in terms of investing,
Really?
Dogecoin, all of those things, because you just go in the app, put your money in.
Yeah.
But now, if you want to have an account and then put your money
Got
into
to
it,
pass an exam.
tests, they actually test you.
So what you're suggesting? Any 8-year-old kid who says I want to be a footballer,
Yeah.
tell them what it's about.
That's
I think sign on dotted line there.
because that's the risk that you're taking. It is volatile.
Yeah.
It is volatile. It is an insecure investment. This is not financial advice. This is not football. In terms of obviously all these different things, there's disclaimers. There's no disclaimer when you're going into the football career. Why not? And that's why it's like, for me, I think there is responsibility lies in the stakeholders, the government. I think the data's out there if you go and search for it. That's why I think my position in terms of where I stand is getting confirmed more and more, in the sense that I believe that players have the responsibility to take control of their lives and their careers. And, football, you need to understand that, once you understand that it's a business, players need to operate from a business mentality and say, this has to be value for value. If they're going to leverage me, I'm not having my off days, I'm not getting my off season, my annual leave. You ain't got annual leave. We can't have a wedding, my mum's wedding to go to. We can't say, I want an annual leave to go. All these sacrifices you're making, what are you getting out from it? How are you leveraging the football system, the PFA, your data, your value?
He's looking at me when
Yeah,
he's data.
waiting for you to
How are you
jump straight in.
leveraging all the things that, because of you being a footballer, to your benefit?
But
That's the thing.
as we sit and we talk about it, does it not seem quite obvious?
It's very obvious. Like from the outside, when I speak to people that I have like friends that go in like UCL, all these different things, they're like, but what? You're telling me you're the only person who does this? I'll be like, what? Like I have a friend, she studied medicine at UCL. She was like, isn't that very stupid of those people? Like,
Well,
not.
yeah, but don't forget, wanting to be a footballer, wanting to be a professional athlete, wanting to be an actress, wanting to be a film star. It's vocational. It comes from the heart.
It's true.
And
yeah.
you're not often thinking strategically. You're just thinking, I want to play football. And if you're 8, 10, 12, 14, and all of a sudden you're in Everton's academy and blah, 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 you're not thinking about the 0.01% of people that succeed. You are just chasing that dream. So I actually wonder if, does the education start with parents? Are the parents being realistic? Do they know what the chances are? Do they know what the chances are of their kid, who they believe is the next whatever? Do they actually know the percentage of that becoming a reality?
So I think it's an interesting one, because if their kid wants to play, would you let your kid play even if you know the chances? Are you now going to stop your kid from playing? Because
No,
I think,
of course you wouldn't, because playing is fantastic. All the wonderful things that come out of playing. But wouldn't you perhaps be a bit more realistic as opposed to chasing a dream with them?
but
Don't know.
isn't life about dreaming?
Yeah. Hey, you're arguing your own argument now.
I do, yeah, because I love a balanced argument.
Yeah,
I love to really not go lopsided on either side. So because I'm a big believer that we started playing football, I don't know about Daniel, because we had a dream.
Yeah.
We had a dream. We wanted to achieve something. We had a goal.
Have your rosy-coloured glasses come off? Are you still in love with being a footballer and everything that entails, but you've just realised that something else has got to happen at the same time?
Well, when you speak about crashes, I think for me, I realized it when I was, well, obviously my dad coming through and telling me you need to focus on other things, but there's many things which are out of your control. And I think that's with life, you know, so it's really dealing with these different setbacks. I've had a lot of different setbacks when I was young, when I was a teenager coming through, many different times where I had to question, I'm doing everything I can, but things are still out of my control, whether it's signing at a club, whether it's picking up an injury. So you start to live more in reality than delusion. All right, it might start off as a dream and say, yeah, I'm going to make it all the way. But when you actually understand the terrain that you're actually operating in, then you just have to adjust accordingly. And I think, like you said, the rose tint glasses, some people still have them on when they're 35. And if they're getting into the real... which I always say it is what it is, because I have a African dad. My dad's Nigerian, very strict on education. Someone might not have that.
Yeah.
So you can only meet people at the point of where they're at.
True.
But you can only try and give them the best advice, which will hopefully set them up for the life that will be best for them. So I think when it comes to all of these different things in football, there's so many different moving parts. There's emotions that come into play. There's ambitions that come into play. There's things that people want to try and achieve, and identity, purpose. But at the end of the day, it's an individual's life. I always say you're not going to get your time back. So however you spent it is spent. You can hopefully spend the next portions of your life better at the level of wisdom that you have. But what's spent is spent. So it's really just
Do you think the women's game is going to benefit from you guys, from the men's game, having gone through this before you, if you know what I mean? It's not been an option for a career for so long for the women's game. It is now, thankfully. Yeah, it's wonderful. But for the longest time, it was never an option anyway. Do you think the up-and-coming female stars might already come predisposed to this type of thinking?
That's the aim. Hopefully they won't have to go through what, you know, a lot of young boys have to go through. I think I'm under the impression that a lot of like female footballers are more prepared for life, better than obviously male footballers who come through academy systems. But it's because they've had it harder in terms of they've always had to balance another job alongside playing football. So I think sometimes it's very beneficial, but I feel like they need to have a lot of caution in terms of those stakeholders, those clubs that are making academies. I think some teams now have like women's academies properly. I know Chelsea have one, but they need to have a bit of caution and learn from the men's game in terms of understanding that this is the structure and procedure we need to go through, and making sure that our girls are doing other things alongside playing football, not just exposing them to that rigid environment. But I know you mentioned that those rose-tinted glasses, and I feel like for me, like, yeah, I think they've come off this. He's laughing.
Yours
All right, sit next to you, bro.
Have yours come off, Daniel?
Mine have come off since last season, innit? Since obviously signing from Maidenhead, innit? Mine have come off massively in terms of understanding the scope of the game and really like, I feel like before that I was like, cool, football. But after, like, obviously signing, going through difficult periods, not training, all these different things, not having anything else alongside it, I really realised that this thing is an absolute scam. And that's the reality. But for me, it's like, I love playing football.
Yeah.
In terms of playing it, pinging a few balls around, goalkeeping. I'm in love with goalkeeping. As in, I can watch the England training sessions on YouTube all day. I can catch volleys, do some side volleys, dive around 3-4 hours a day.
Wow.
But in terms of the actual system, the career, everything, I think it's a scam, innit?
Well, it's a great motivator for what you're doing.
That's why I do it, because I stopped doing this for like a good few months, going through that period of obviously understanding, okay, cool, this is the reality of the game. Do I really want to put myself out there and champion this message whilst I'm suffering and going through it as well? Or, you know, should I just, you know, go into the background, deal with it, and just, you know, not do anything about it, just go through it and focus on myself? Do you get what I'm saying? So that's what drives it. That's where it comes from in terms of the drive, because I've experienced it myself, and I know the effects that it can have if you don't have an identity beyond football.
Yeah.
It's good.
But I know this has turned into a little
Yeah,
we're
we've
getting
never been
interviewed,
Because
innit?
I love it.
It's an
After
intro
I
we've
met,
never been in.
well, no, because when I met
still
you, when I met Daniel, and of course, then I followed up and I started reading, and then I started following you, obviously on LinkedIn. The stuff you do, the stuff you talk about, and congratulations again on the investment you secured. That's amazing. So yeah, it's a great thing you're doing, and wish you the best of luck. But
Thanks.
I wanted to talk about data.
Oh, but after she's finished grilling,
Yeah,
I felt like I was on Piers Morgan.
Yeah, straight in.
I felt like I was on Piers Morgan.
So
She was
good.
like,
Well, all I can say is you handled the questions very well, Daniel. Very well, Toby.
media
So.
prepped, innit? Like,
that's
come
it.
on.
Yeah,
But I wanted to really go into, like, you've had 30, 40 years in the football industry in terms of the commercial side, handling players, partnership, brands, all of those things. How has the use of data in football evolved since you started back in
So obviously
those
I've
days?
really been on the business side. I've never worked with the performance side of football. Obviously with my new software, we touch on the performance side, but we all know the story about how it started in performance with Billy Bean and the Oakland Athletics. On the business side, it's been really slow to develop. And I used to go around saying, "Oh, we're so far behind America. We're so far behind the telecommunications industry." And actually, reality is we're not. It's a case of, and it's not dissimilar to footballers, I guess. There are some businesses, some football clubs, some football entities or sports organisations that are doing brilliant things brilliantly. And then there's a whole group of people who are doing things and trying the best they can. And then there's another group of organisations that just aren't doing anything or whatever. So but it really took hold and started moving with an organisation called Good Form and a gentleman called Stuart Dalrymple. Unfortunately, Stuart Dalrymple passed, I think about 13 years ago, but he was really the founder of it. But he hired two really smart guys who left him and broke off and formed their own businesses, Gareth Balch and Gary Adamson. And they formed these businesses called Foresight and Two Circles. And Two Circles has ended up being this massive behemoth of a business who about 15 years ago just went into football clubs, all sports organisations really, but let's talk about football clubs, and said, you need to start using your data. You need to start understanding who your customers are. I use the term customers. I know the football industry doesn't like to. They like to use the term fans. I think we should talk about fans as being customers, because when you're a customer, you expect a level of service. Yeah?
Interesting.
We've got to stop taking advantage of our fans. Yeah? We've got to treat them like customers. But anyway, so this company, Two Circles, going into football clubs saying, you've got to start understanding who your customers are. You've got to start giving them what they want. Now, there's this myth that in football we never lose our fans. Yeah, you grow up and you've got Arsenal in your heart. You're never going to walk away from Arsenal. Doesn't matter what they do. You might be damn well peed off with them, but you ain't going to go support Tottenham, are you? No, it doesn't happen. Whereas you wake up one morning, your e-phone's broken, your contract with E's let you down, or Vodafone comes out with a better offer, you switch, don't you? No brand loyalty. But in football, in sports, there's absolute brand loyalty, and it's called fandom. So there was this myth for the longest time that we didn't need to take care of our fans or treat them like customers and give them a certain level of service because they're elastic. They will never leave us. They'll be peed off with us, but they'll come back. That's changing now because people don't have the amount of time they used to have. We are all ultra busy. We don't have the same sort of concentration span. So if you don't give me what I want, I will find it somewhere else. I might always be an Arsenal fan, but I might choose not to come down. I might choose to just stream it instead. And by the way, I might not go on your website. I might get it off BBC Sports. And I might not join your Facebook account. I might follow my mates because his is more entertaining and I still get the news. So it's that principle of a growing up, of realising that A, we can't take our fans for granted. B, there's too much stuff to do and so little time to do it. If you don't give people what they want these days, they'll go elsewhere. And by the way, it's the same with your podcast. If you're not giving them entertaining content,
facts.
They'll drop off and they'll move on.
100%.
So it's exactly the same with football. So it really started taking hold thanks to Stuart Dalrymple and Good Form, Fortunately, Stuart passed, but then the two people that came out of his business that picked up on that and moved forward with Two Circles. And then my business came along a few years later, Winners, and we're hopefully doing some good work too. So that's where it all sort of started.
Oh, that's amazing. And what's like the market value of like Two Circles in that?
Well, Two Circle, I don't know what their market value is, but in terms of, so the world of, this is the bizarre thing about football. Everybody who doesn't work in football thinks it's a massive industry, yeah? But
Literally.
yeah, all football clubs are SMEs. You know, they're not that big really. It's just everybody thinks they're big because we've got a huge share of voice. Because when we used to have newspapers, football would dominate the back 6 pages. But in reality, we're small businesses. So in terms of how big the sports data business is, I don't know. But the data business, the technology business, it's huge. But we, as football clubs, we as FIFA and UEFA and CONCACAF and all the sports organisations out there, we don't even generate a tenth of the data that Spotify or Netflix generates.
Seriously?
Well, yeah, because, I mean, firstly, they're all pure play 100% online, and it's the technology that generates the data, isn't it?
Okay.
So our use of technology is a byproduct of the fact that we have a physical product. Our physical product is you guys running around on the field. That's your core product. Well, Netflix's core product is digital. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a very different scenario. I don't know if you've heard the term big data. Everybody talks about big data. We don't generate big data.
What does big data mean?
Well, so some people think it's... Do you use expletives when you talk on your podcast, by the way? Can you drop...
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
So marketers think it's a wanky term that we generated just to make people sound cool. Big data. Nobody could actually define what big data is, but it just means trillions and trillions and trillions of terabytes of data. And we don't generate that as an industry. By the way, if anybody out there's a data geek listening to this, they'll be, Fiona, you're wrong. We are big
Have
data.
you heard of Russell Slade?
Yeah.
You know him.
Sorry, I didn't mean to screw my face up. Okay, I'm going to tell you a story, and you can choose to edit this or not.
My God,
No.
that was crazy.
No. You can choose to edit this or not. I actually had him on it myself because I spoke to him about 2 months ago.
Oh my God.
Russell Slade was a part-time, whatever, he was a teacher in Nottingham when I was at Notts County Football Club as a commercial manager. Russell Slade was best mates with our assistant coach, Mick Jones. I think Neil Warnock was the manager or something, or John Barnwell or whatever. And somebody set me up on a blind date with Russell Slade.
No way.
He fucking didn't show up. Swear down. And it was before the date. Are you doing that because I said the F-bomb?
No.
okay.
He didn't show up.
He didn't show. And it was before the days of mobile phones. It phones. I sat in a pub waiting for Russell Slade. Anyway, it's just a funny story. It's just an anecdote. And of course, I know it's funny, isn't it? But I spoke to him for the first time 2 months ago, for the first time in years and years.
In 30 years.
And I told him about it. He
What did you
laughed.
say?
Well, he was apologetic, of course, because ultimately he is a nice guy and a gentleman. He doesn't remember it at all.
Wow.
I friggin' remember it because it's the only time I've ever been stood up in my life. But anyway, digressing. Were you going to ask me about Project Red Card?
Yeah, and all the data. Because I think in one of his messages, he used the term big data.
Yeah, so like I say, people like to use the term big data because it's exciting, but it's kind of whatever, it's a wanky marketing term. Russell's point is all the performance data that you guys generate, your biometrics, your run rate, your duels in the air, blah, 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 blah. Him and his partner are using the data law in the UK, which is the UK GDPR, to try and argue with the Premier League that this data belongs to you, or basically in principle. I have actually written an article that, and I didn't say this to Russell on the phone with him 2 months ago, but I don't think he'll win at all. I don't think that. No, I don't, because under UK GDPR, the data that belongs to you is who you are, where anything that can define who you are, You would not be generating biometrics if you didn't play for Maidenhead United, who gave you a vest wired up to catapult, If you weren't playing for Maidenhead United, who plays within the Football League, who puts on the matches that, So all that stuff that's generated either when you're training or when you're playing on the pitch is not owned by you. What I think Russell Slade and Project Red Card will do brilliantly, or what they have done brilliantly, is they've highlighted the issue that there's data. But fundamentally, what I believe it will come down to is part of your contract negotiations.
Okay.
Here's my fee, here's my bonus, here's my image rights. I want to share the data revenue as well.
Yeah, that's big.
And then it'll come down to who's got the biggest power when
like
it comes to the
Ronaldo.
negotiation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who's going to be able to sit in front of the technical director or whatever and say, I want X% of any revenue you get because of my data.
Yeah.
So that's my personal opinion. Hey, Russell, if you're listening to this.
He definitely is. He messages me all the time. Oh, man.
So what would clubs come back to if we actually, as players, went up to them and said, you want to start being paid for our data?
Well, Toby, it's like any negotiation, isn't it? What do they say to you when you say, I want £1 million for every goal I score?
They try and knock you down.
It's true.
But
or say no. And then it's like any negotiation. Who controls the power in that the argument? And an ideal scenario is you both get out of it what you want, but that doesn't always happen.
So how can players control the power more in those situations with their data?
Well, when it comes to the performance data, the stuff I just talked to you about, the biometrics, the stuff that would not happen if you were not playing for a club in a league under a governing body, you can't do shit about it, sorry. Because you don't own it. It's like your mobile phone, yeah? You're texting. Who owns the content of those text messages?
You.
Your network operator.
Oh, damn.
Right, yeah.
Well, of course they do, because you're using their phone or their network.
Crazy.
And yes, and don't get me wrong, they'll give you a copy of it if you want it, but you don't own it.
It's
What
like
you own-
YouTube. We don't own any of this content. That's crazy.
Well, you
though.
own the IP of what you're
Of you
producing.
but in terms of what, that's
when
crazy.
Yeah, but it's reality. So back to what
wow.
footballers can do, indeed any professional athletes. So, and again, we're not here to sell Pro Data Stat, but that's the reason for building the software that I did. Because in the same way you're thinking about a footballer's post-playing career, I'm thinking about an athlete's not just post-performance career, but also how to make the most out of their current period. So at the moment, and I think you already mentioned it anyway, you're seen as footballers. You're so much more than footballers. Now, in the world of commerciality, you're also a brand. You are a brand because people know your name. People don't talk about Fiona Green. I'm not a brand. You guys are a brand. And that's not what we're not using enough, or you're not using enough. And when you think about your shelf life as a brand, what we should be ideally doing is helping you commercialise it as much as possible. Now, for some people, commercialising it might mean money in the bank. For you, it might be donations for your charity. For you, it might be listeners to your podcast. But the point is, we should be taking everything that you represent and providing you with an opportunity to not necessarily amplify it, but understand the data around it to negotiate better. So our proposition is, whatever performance data we can get for you, you should have at your fingertips. Yeah, so that you or your agent can go in and talk to your technical director about the way you perform and play it back to them. Instead of the manager telling you what you're worth, go back to them and tell them what you believe you're worth, because you've got the data. Okay,
It's top tier.
We've already talked about social followers. You know, everybody's excited about how many social followers people have. Great, not going to knock that, but don't forget, the more Instagram followers you have, who's benefiting, you or Mark Zuckerberg?
Mark Zuckerberg.
Mark Zuckerberg's
People on his
business.
platform.
Yeah, it's still important, but we should be using our social followers to support our objectives. More donations for your charity, more people listening to your podcast, more people in your database. And that's the third thing. You guys have fans out there, okay? You've got fans from your days at Chelsea. You've got your fans from your days previously. As you go through your career, you are going to have fans that will follow you wherever you go. These are fans of you and your brand. And I know brand's a hard commercial term, but it's a reality, yeah? They're fans of you and your brand. They may also be fans of Maidenhead United. They may also be fans of the England team, blah, blah, blah. But they have bought into you, so you should take
Have
them
that
with
data,
you. Mkhitaryan went
That's
from
massive.
wherever to Arsenal. The whole of Armenia ended up in Arsenal's database.
Yeah.
You know, because that's just reality. Jack Grealish went from Aston Villa to Man City. You've got Jack Grealish fans in Aston Villa's database, Jack Grealish fans in Man City's database, Jack Grealish fans in the English FA's database. He does not have his own database. This is such valuable information.
Because obviously that's like millions. He's probably had like, what, 20 million followers on Instagram.
Yeah.
So if he gets like maybe like 1 million of those, and
You are so bang on.
he sells like £10 t-shirts.
So
You are
for
so
to
bang
1
on,
million
Daniel.
people.
but is
10 million.
Is the only way to convert this data that we have to money by selling a product to
or a service.
No.
or-
I mean, yes, you could do direct sales.
how can a player make money from their data?
In that case, we're talking about an actual database, and we'll come on to other data points in a minute. But in that case, we're talking about an actual database. So the principle is this, right? So Ronaldo gets paid $339,000 every time he tweets or puts a commercial message on Instagram. When you put a message on Instagram or YouTube or Facebook, you are not controlling who sees that message. You know that, don't you? Yeah?
Algorithm.
The algorithm controls it. And so the engagement level, the amount of people that see and respond to your message is reduced because of, When you use email marketing, which means having somebody's email address in your database, you control who that message goes out to. And by the way, the cost of sending emails is way, way cheaper than if you were to advertise on Instagram. The only way you can control who sees your adverts on Instagram is if you pay for their advertising. Of course, that's Zuckerberg's business model. Of course it is. It's all about advertising. So he uses all your data, all your followers, everything he knows about their performance to sell advertising. And then when you want to buy advertising to promote Beyond Football, it costs anywhere between £4, 12 quid, cost per thousand, whatever. When you've got the data in your own database, the cost per thousand, which is the traditional metric we use, comes way down. It's like 50 pence per thousand.
50 pence.
Yeah. Wow. And you get so much more trackability and insight from it. Back to your point about how do you monetize data? Is it just selling something? Not necessarily, no. It could be indirect revenue because you might have a sponsor. And what the sponsor wants is your fans to go on their website, yeah? So when you build an email and you send it out to your 5,000 fans and you say, go and visit my sponsor because they do great stuff, bang, they go out of your email, click on the link, go to your sponsor's website, and the sponsor knows that it was your email that generated that traffic for them. There's so many different ways that we monetize data. By the way, there's a fantastic not new, but there's this current thinking in the States, and the term for it is infonomics. And the principle behind infonomics can be summed up in an article in Forbes magazine, and the title is, "One day your company's data will be worth more than your company." Bear that in mind, Daniel. Bear that in mind for your current businesses. One day your company's data will be worth more than your company. So in the States, where infonomics is way more progressed than it is here, there was this report out by McKinsey Consultants in 2021. They interviewed something like 230 data mature organisations, and 10% of them said data was responsible for more than 20% of their revenue.
Wow.
Yeah? But this is still a new concept. And the reason why it's new is because, I don't know, apologies if you already know this, if I'm teaching grandma to suck eggs, but when you value a business, there are certain things you can put on a balance sheet. Perfect example for football club. I would love to work with somebody for this on a football club. An Arab or a billionaire, an American, whatever, they come out of nowhere and they say, I'm going to buy a football club. And they value the assets in the business, which are the stadium, the season ticket holders, the trophies, the players, the blah, 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 blah. We're not currently valuing data. Wow. So and the reason for that is because data doesn't currently sit on a balance sheet for a business. The principle of infonomics is finding a way to get that data on a balance sheet. So when this billionaire, Arab or American or Brit, whatever, comes and buys a football club, if they start applying infonomics, then when they sell that club 5, 10, 15 years later, they've got another asset on the bottom line, data, that will have a value to it.
Because I think that's what's key, because that's what a lot of companies sell, data. Like every time you click on the cookies, you're selling your data. Nothing's free. For you to sign up or to access a website, when you go on a lot of websites nowadays, you can't scroll down without obviously signing up, giving your data, your email.
And by the way, this is one of the weaknesses of the podcast model, which, by the way, I'm not suggesting we need to change it because podcasting, whether it's through Spotify or YouTube, is giving you fantastic reach.
And no one's
But
giving
unless you put a registration process in there, which you can't, because it's Spotify and it's YouTube, you don't actually know who's listening to it.
yeah.
If you knew who was listening to it, how many listeners have you had roughly?
In total?
Yeah, roughly. Just give me a number. 80,000, 8,000,
Yeah,
whatever.
something like that. Yeah,
But-
I've on YouTube we've touching like 200k views.
Wow.
But listeners, we work across obviously Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere. So we just recently signed with Sports
So,
Social Network and
Roughly how many in total?
maybe like 100k
So if you had 100,000 email addresses
emails. Yeah.
in your database, by the way, that's bigger than most League Two football clubs and touching some of the League Ones. Not only could you send out emails and say, why not donate to Toby's charity?
Yeah,
You know,
it's true.
why not blah, blah, blah. This brand that you've just, your mortgage company that you're now.
Yeah, Homie Mortgages.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can sell that to them, saying that.
Yeah. How many of these
It's true,
100,000 people might one day be in
And
the market
normally the
for a
conversion
mortgage?
rate is usually 10%, right?
I don't think that there isn't really an average. I don't know where you get that from, but unfortunately, the world is so complicated in digital. There's
So you can't really
different
say.
conversion rates. But
Because obviously the sales conversion rate, if you make 100 calls, you expect to maybe like close, maybe like.
do you know what, Daniel? I'm the worst person to have this type of conversation with because I'm a data geek. So
Okay.
I won't hypothesize. I
Yeah.
have to go back to
yes.
the computer.
Fair play,
But
fair
no,
play.
but the principle is you can track it. Most importantly, you can track it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you can tell your mortgage company exactly
Boom,
how
this
many
is how
people.
much I can
you can see
charge.
how many people donated to your charity as a result of Beyond Football's database. So the key message is, footballers, please start building your own database. The other thing that what we're doing, Pro Data Stack, back to the brand. If you guys were actually considered a brand in the same way Barclays is a brand or Nike is a brand, you wouldn't just be looking at your social followers in your channels, yeah? You'd be thinking about all the people saying your name around the world. So within this software we've built, Pro Data Stack, we're tracking all the people around the world talking about our clients. So
The case study that you spoke to me about, of that player at Man City.
Well, so our clients, we've signed and announced the
Okay.
agency that represents Ruben Diaz.
Nice, yeah.
But and we've actually signed, I don't know if you know Cian Ashford, who's at Cardiff City. He did his first team start in April, and he's a Wales under 21. So Cian Ashford, young lad, really, you know, yes, he's playing Wales under 21, Cardiff City first team. You should see how many people have been talking about him. He's just come back off his 3-match pre-season friendly. I was so excited to update his agent today. How many? Well, I can't share with you because it's his data, not yours.
Okay.
But the point is, he would never have had access to that. He would have been able to see what's happening in his social followers. He would never have considered it as an important metric. But imagine how valuable that is to sponsors or even to your club when you can talk about the influence you're having around the world. So that's something really important.
That's
as
amazing.
well.
So practically right now, players, what do we need to do? What's the first thing? I know you said build your own database.
Well,
but
come talk to us. No, Toby.
Pro Data Stack.
Pro Data Stack,
That's
thank
it,
you.
man. Because it's a no-brainer. When she was selling it to me, there I was just
I
like,
wasn't selling it, Daniel.
She was
we
selling
were
it to
just
me.
chatting.
Yeah.
Selling
She
it
showed me the whole software, bro. She
Yeah.
hasn't even showed you the software.
not yet.
It's
Not
an
yet.
app,
Soon
yeah. One click, you got all your data, all your goals, assists, that. All the people who are typing you up on Twitter, Instagram, everything. I can go to these people.
I'll share you Jack Grealish's numbers because he's not a client. So from the January the 1st until now, because I just looked at it this morning, I love looking at his stats because they're so fascinating. And by the way, when we do that, we look at sentiment as well. How are people feeling about you around the world? I mean, that is gold dust. So for the first 7 months of this year, 358,000 mentions of Jack Grealish's name across 55,000 digital channels. That can be anything from me and you talking in our Facebook to the Daily Mail, B-Sky B, Reddit, CNBC, whatever. So 350,000 people talking about him. The cumulative reach, 500 million people. And 27 million interactions. 27 million people comments, liking.
Sharing.
And at the moment, nobody is talking about that.
Wow.
And a 36 net positive sentiment. So people thinking great things about him, even when he fell off the plane when he landed after his holiday in Ibiza or whatever. The point is, yeah, that's the type of data we're trying to bring to you guys, that your performance data is important, and that's why we've included it. You currently aren't doing it. The clubs are doing it. So we've built this really easy application where you can get access to it. But then also your social data, what we're calling digital mentions, people talking about you around the world. I mean, when you, again, going back to Kian, just so excited, this young lad, 19, not really on many people's radars. Hello, 5.8% of his mentions were from Australia.
Crazy. Yeah.
Kian, what's going on in Australia, man? You've got one heck of a fan base down there. Yeah. That's really important information for when his agent tries to do him a sponsorship deal, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
That's massive.
And this is only just, we've only just started with him. We've only just signed with him. And then the last data point we're tracking, because it's an easy one that people will understand why it's so valuable. How many people are Google searching your name? And where in the world are they searching that? Kind of tells you that
on the top, right? But not in detail, right?
Yeah, I know. And more importantly, we've just got it in a chart and it updates and you can see it. So how many people... Have you done it then, Daniel? Have you seen how many people...
I check my Google name like every single day.
Do you really?
Yeah, I analyse my data.
You need to get on our software, man, because then you can have it all in one place.
Because obviously... I'm very strategic in terms of my personal brand. So I've claimed my knowledge panel on Google.
Well done, you.
So I can every picture you see, everything you see on Google, I can control.
Have you got a
that.
wiki page?
I don't have one yet. So I need to do that. But in terms of like, I control, because you need to control the narrative. If someone searches you on Google now, I work at a school, so if they search me on Google, I need to make sure that the right pictures are there.
Isn't that brilliant?
But yeah, I searched it up, like how many, like 100,000 people, 100,000 searches and stuff.
And knowing where they're coming from in the world, when you think about your business opportunities, where are the people that are interested in you? Where are they based around?
But this is exactly what we're talking about in terms of players leveraging the system. Yeah. You need to, now, a player like Kian, there's so many players like that we don't know what's going to happen, God forbid. By the age of 23, you don't know whether he's still going to be playing or not. But if he's now leveraged that data, even if he's not playing, these are still fans that like him for him.
Yeah.
And now he can still sell to them and create a business out of that.
And your case study that you shared at Football Law, who's got a removal company. Josh, okay, he's focusing on moving players, but he could open a division that just moves people, consumers.
And that's what he's done now.
Oh, is he?
So
imagine if he'd actually built a imagine if he'd have built a database of all the fans that think he's brilliant over the years.
Yeah. Well,
so anyway, to answer your point, Toby, without being flippant, start building your own database, definitely, without a shadow of a doubt. But accept that there's a limitation on how much performance data you're ever going to get. With all due respect to Russell Slade, there is a limit on how much you're ever going to get because you don't own it. Yeah, you didn't generate it. Your body physically generated it, but you didn't put on the event. You didn't pay for the catapult license. So you've just got to be realistic about that. So the point is, leverage what you can get access to. Don't worry about the stuff you can't get access to.
That's perfect, man. Yeah, man. It's been amazing. This one here is like a different aura. I feel like it's an educational session. Yeah, providing really serious value in terms of the behind the scenes and actually what can actually help you go beyond football. But I know Fiona's already impacted us massive. I don't know if you've seen the website after you had the call with Justine.
No.
But we've completely transformed it. We obviously have email marketing. So over the last couple of weeks, all these different things, I've got so many different contacts now.
Brilliant,
so I'm starting to build my database.
Nice.
So we now have our templates. So Justine's on that, got Josh on that. As soon as you go on a website, straight away there's a big banner.
Yeah, because MailChimp, you're using MailChimp. They give you it for free. Why wouldn't you use it?
Exactly that, yeah. So we're seeing the effects of it now. But I was wondering, just to finish off, in terms of being a woman in the sports world, obviously the commercial side, in the men's side, in the performance world, you don't see many women. So what advice would you give to younger women aspiring to enter the sports tech industry, or similar to the way you've done it?
So look, I love being a female. I love being a female in the sports world. I love being a female in the business world. But I actually could put my hand on my heart and say I don't know that I've ever been discriminated against. People say, of course you were, of course you were. I didn't actually feel it if I was. So I would say just do great work. Just do great work so it doesn't become about your gender, it becomes about your work. But no, I'm a massive champion. Join women in football. Join all the women's groups out there, because one thing I have identified as I've started doing this in recent times is I think there's a camaraderie around women. I don't know if you guys have
big,
it,
massive, yeah.
but where we acknowledge and accept that some people are suffering with this gender discrimination, and we want to help each other. So if there are any females listening out there, apart from reach out to me, of course they can reach out to me, just be damn good at what you do, be purposeful, work with intent, and then your gender shouldn't matter. It will for some people, but you can't do anything about them. Yeah, don't worry about the stuff you can't impact. And then join the groups, join the tribes, join the associations where we are supportive and wanting to count for women's rights.
No, that's perfect. Amazing. And I know you brought some gifts for some of our listeners.
Yeah, so published author, very proud to all the people that helped me produce this. There's lots of case studies. I don't actually talk about players in here because it was before I moved into the player space. But the principles of how Man United uses data should be exactly the same for Toby. Of course, you don't sell tickets every weekend and T-shirts and all the rest of it.
You've got events.
Well, when you build your database, you'll be able to.
Ready to go.
Come on.
So the principles are exactly the same. So yeah, the book's called Winning with Data. So anyone who is listening to this and reaches out to you guys, we'll send them a couple of copies.
Come on.
Amazing.
Hashtag Beyond Football.
Hashtag Beyond Football.
Yeah, amazing. No. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, man. You've really opened our eyes up to. It's a call to action. Ultimately, that's what we've seen. Players need to take action on their data.
Take control. Get access to. It'll help them now as they're going through their careers. Massively help them post-career as well, whatever their future looks like. Yeah. And by the way, it doesn't matter what level of player you are or how big your brand is. In the world of data, it's about quality, not quantity.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, thank you very much, Fiona, for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Amazing.
Yeah. So
Cheers.
make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. Check out Pro Data Stack. It is a game changer. And keep on joining us on this journey, man. We want to highlight the importance of having an identity beyond football. Join the Beyond Football movement. Check out our website. Come into our database.
Love that one.
Come into our database. Sign up and obviously help us, support us, man. We're moving. Thank you. And till next time, we're out, locked and loaded. 3 out of 3, done.